Hi, I'm Ven. Welcome to my book corner. Today we're taking a look at the latest novel from the award-winning author R.F. Kuang, and that is Yellowface, that released at the back end of May 2023. So the basic story beats first of all. This is a story about an author and the publishing industry in general, and it follows a character called June, or she's normally called June, and her relationship to another author called Athena, who both came up through college together. However, whilst June had at best a middling, if not disappointing debut, Athena became a critical darling and a bestseller, and you've got a level of professional jealousy going on here. After they both had a night out, unfortunately Athena passes away after an accident eating pancakes of all things. Following this, June makes some interesting decisions. She starts off by stealing the manuscript that her apparent friend had been working on, and from there she does some rewrites and passes it off as her own. What follows is a journey of getting the book published, the editing process, although that's quite lightly touched on, and when it becomes a bestseller, very much the whistle-stop tour of the world, doing all the book signings, Q&As, meet the fans. And the biggest focus here is on the social media aspects of the industry in general, and how June very much is riding a high all the way through. She's commenting, she's making jokes, she's interacting with her fan base through social media. However, a few different things come back to bite her. The first one is she took a new pen name for this title to distance herself from the previous one, and that is Juniper Song. And unfortunately this causes some accusations of whitewashing due to the fact that this is a story very much about that she stole Chinese labourers in World War One. And a lot of people start to accuse her of cultural appropriation, and so the Twitter backlash begins. Then accusations come out that potentially she didn't write this story herself and that she stole it. And you start to see her getting more and more wound up by the various criticisms online, and she does the thing that you should never do when this sort of thing happens. She starts reacting and responding. She tries tracking down people. She costs some people their jobs. That comes back to bite her later on. She does injunctions. She physically has people tracked and arranges to meet them to basically threaten or blackmail them. And you see this slowly but surely disintegration of her mental health. But none of it's her fault, because she wrote this book, even though she stole it. Overall, the story is pretty good. You've got a natural progression from beginning to end, and it's really, really well paced and well plotted, so that's really, really good. The other way that this is actually really strong is covering the social media aspect of how fickle social media can be. You can be the darling one minute and the devil the next, and that is really shown here to great effect. The other interesting points here is how the publishing industry works, and whilst in the acknowledgements at the end of the book Kuang says this is something that she hasn't suffered from personally, I'm pretty sure this is something that is implied to go on within the industry in terms of the fact that sometimes talented writers are just ignored, assuming of course in this case that June is a talented writer. That is slightly up in the air. And also how very much you can become the token writer, be for what's fashionable at the time. So the token Asian writer or the token gay writer, so on and so forth, and how you very much become the focus of the industry as that one person, and it can sometimes preclude other authors of different groups to do. There's a little bit of critique of that in here. The other bit of critique that is really interesting is on how publishing houses force the rewrites, looking to make stuff have more mass market appeal. And at one point she is offered a job to write another story about Chinese stuff, which has obviously blown up at this point, and June actually refuses to write this as career destroying, especially when she sees what's proposed for the story, because she sees it as racist. And the argument that is given by the publishing house in here is, well, that's fine because it's only being released in the West. And that's quite eye-opening and, if accurate, quite worrying. Although, to be fair, we are aware that this sort of stuff goes on in other industries as well, so it wouldn't be that surprising. And all that helps build to a general sense of the world, and this is set in current day, so the world building does not have to be particularly heavy here, but the impact of these things is actually really well done. A book like this, however, is nothing without its characters, and this follows June start to finish all the way through the book, and I have a couple of issues with June as a character. She is incredibly well written, her motivations make sense, but she is irredeemably horrible as a person. It is very unusual for me to be able to read a full book where I want to throttle the main character from page 3 to the end, and June had that effect on me throughout the entire book. And to be fair, it's not just June, because with the possible exception of Athena's mum, I can't think of another character in here that I'd want to spend the time of day with, because nearly everyone in this book is a monster, or at least starts as a monster. There's one other character that maybe has got some redeeming qualities in there, but I think even that's pushing it. But June is the focus here, and there's a number of reasons why I hate her. Number one, she's entitled, then she's egotistical, then she's delusional, which is not a good sort of character step, but it is character progression for her, and it does make sense for the story that's being told here of someone that feels slighted, gets the big break, which they steal, but doesn't get the support to deal with this newfound fame and pressure that she goes under, and when things start to implode, she doesn't know how to cope with that because she has no support network around her. And as social media starts avalanching on her, and news reports and hit pieces, she can't cope and she starts striking out, and she's quite vindictive in the way she does it sometimes as well, which does, by the end of the book, cause probably her biggest problem with some of her actions. Although the person that involves, again, they're not particularly redeemable by the end of the book either, so I'm not sure which is the lesser of two evils there. But despite all that, she is a really intriguing character, if dislikable, and really well written. So this book is everywhere at the moment. It's only been out about 3 weeks at times of recording, and it's all over BookTok and BookTube, and in the you must read this list and best reads of the summer, so on and so forth. Is it one of the best reads of the summer? Not sure about that. Should you read it? Absolutely. I had a great time hating the main character in this book, which is an odd thing for me to say and makes me feel uncomfortable as a human. But they are dislikable but compelling. You want to see what she's going to do next. You want to see her get a comeuppance in many regards. And you want to just see where the story goes. And for as dislikable a character as June is, that is a real achievement. On top of that, it's not a case of, well, she's not great and everyone else is white knighted, because it's not. Nearly everyone in this book is at best a shade of grey, which gives them some real nuance. On top of that as well, the world building really aids the decision making of the characters in here. You can see why June is acting like she is, because she doesn't have that support network. And as the various things are kicking off on social media or Q&As and meets, you can see her beginning to unravel, and her decisions, whilst horrible decisions, do make sense for the character that she is and where she is with her headspace, and it makes a really, really good read in general. So for me personally, this goes straight into A tier as a recommended read. I'd love to know if you've read this, what did you think of it, and have you read any of Kwong's other stuff? I should also add, this is not a bad place to start with her works, simply because it's a little bit shorter than all the other ones. Having read this now, I probably am going to check out Babel at some point, as it now doesn't scare me quite as much as it did before. Anyway, on that note, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.